the beginning of cropping rice in Portugal was here. Some machinery for agriculture was tested here long ago. So we have two different sites. These 18,000 hectares, around 2/3 are here on this place, which we call Charneca, which is the heat. Cork Trees. Yes, yes. This is one of our main assets. It's around 6,600 hectares of cork oak trees. Yeah, I think it's the biggest in the country, the biggest continuous area of cork oak belonging to a single owner. In total, in the past we had 48,000 hectares, but now we only retain 18. 18 is 3 times the size of Manhattan. Okay. This is the cork oak surface. Yeah. Not some we have some mixtures of trees. We have the maritime pine as well, and the umbrella pine, and maritime pine. Okay. And we have also some eucalyptus. We only manage a little bit, not too many hectares, and the other area, which is around I think 400 hectares, are managed by a company, a pulp company, paper company.
And why a private company has got interest in this farm?
Because it's one area that we rented. Yeah, it's rented. So we don't want to manage that area. So we made an agreement and a contract, and they pay us an annual fee. So we harvest the cork every year, but the cork, as you know, is only on the same tree every 9 years. Yeah. Is this the area of maritime pine, which is around 1,000 hectares. Yeah. This is, I think we're going to cross this area here later on, and then you'll see the size of the trees we have here. And we cut every year wood as well. We had also some problems with a disease that is affecting the pine. It came from Asia, I believe, and it's affecting Portugal and some parts of Spain. There is a contention stripe around the border to avoid this, which is caused by a nematode, and this nematode is flying inside of an insect, yeah, and then it goes inside the tree and it dries the tree in 3 months. Yeah. So we lost lots of value of our inside the cork. So this is the areas that we need to take from 2010 to 2018, the areas that we are harvesting. So there are nine spots, and we started the project with the University of Agriculture in Lisbon, trying to harmonize and make it easier and more efficient for harvesting the bark. Instead of harvesting one here and one place there and one there, we try to make areas of the same, or plots of the same area, and more or less the same amount of cork, to make it every year the same income. So what we do, and I tell you a little bit of the story, now we start collecting some samples with the buyer and an independent authority. Yeah? So the buyer comes here and we take around 500 or more samples, small samples. Then those are measured and are analyzed on the quality of the cork, and then we classify it on different classes. From that classes we apply a formula, and then from that formula we come with a price. In the past we had a minimum price below which we cannot come, but we had 50% of the cork with that minimum price and 50% depending on the class. And it has more or less been aligned with our expectations. I think that this year the price that we have on the budget is around 21.5 euros per 15 kilos. So but there are corks of 40, 30. It depends on the quality, but this is a long cycle. You know, the first tree starts producing or first harvest at 25, 35 years, and then the first cork that you can really use for cork stoppers, it's more or less at the age of 40. So
the tree must be around about 40.
It's a lifetime. So we're working for our grandsons mainly.
Yes,
it's a long scale, yeah.
This is the kind of thing that is really made for future. Because you plant the tree, but your sons and your grandsons will receive the money. Yes, so it's. I think it's very interesting because it's sustainable in time. So you cannot do harm in the tree right now, because then you will not receive anything, and it's interesting.
So this means that we are investing a lot on the montado, which is this ecosystem of cork oak, trying to protect the new trees, yeah, and to correct some of the mistakes that have been done in the past, because this coexistence between agriculture and forestry was not very well balanced in the past. Yeah? So we are trying to correct, rejuvenate it, and invest a lot in pruning and making our trees healthier.
We have been around here looking for the trees because we are going to talk a bit about this lichens, these things growing on the tree bark. Okay, the thing is that since the 19th century we have started to taking nitrogen out of the atmosphere to use in agriculture. So in account for that we have been able to support half of the human population with that artificially fixed nitrogen, because until that moment it was nitrogen fixed by the soil bacterial. From that moment onwards we started to fix nitrogen and support half of the population. The thing is that most of the nitrogen that we use as fertilizers to feed the plants, to feed the cattle, actually is not used. We don't eat most of the nitrogen we give to a cow. We give a huge amount of food with nitrogen, but the cow, just when we eat the cow, we just eat a small portion of that. The remaining nitrogen goes to the ecosystem, and that is where we come in, trying to see what are the effects of that nitrogen. This excessive nitrogen is one of the factors. You have climate change that we have all heard of, you have biodiversity loss that you have all heard of, and we also have problems with eutrophication of the ecosystems. And that is also one of the critical ecosystem functions that is being altered by humans. We have been using these lichens things to study the effect of that excessive nitrogen. We are here in a very heavily grazed area, where you can imagine there is lots of input of nitrogen and there is excessive nitrogen. And we can go from this to a place that we have been lunching, where there's cows but there's very rarely cows, and to a place where is a forest where there are no cows, no grazing. And the difference between those sites is that the nitrogen that is in the soil volatilizes as ammonia, NH3, a gas, and impacts lichens. So Pinho was saying that the plants here are really happy with this excessive nitrogen. They have lots of chlorophyll. They are using that nitrogen, using and making leaves and making organic matter. The thing is that excessive nitrogen has an impact on the rest of the ecosystem. We're not seeing, but it has impact on the soil, fauna and flora, but also on these organisms. And we are using these organisms to rank the effect. One of the questions people asked us, what is the optimum, say, amount of grazing, land use intensity that maximize biodiversity? And we are doing this experiment here at Companhia das Lezírias, this area, and also in a nearby area, which is a military field, which has no grazing at all. And we are comparing the number of species per area on these sites. And what we are seeing is that actually it's not neither this area, which is heavily grazed, nor the military area, which has no grazing at all, that have the maximum biodiversity. The maximum biodiversity, that is the maximum amount of species per area, it's actually found in the between. Low intensity, true, but still in the middle. So it's a curve like this, the biodiversity versus the intensity. It's higher somewhere in low, but still some intensity of grazing. This is related to the intermediate disturbance hypothesis. It's a biological idea in which biodiversity is maximized in intermediate levels of disturbance. Not in the absence of disturbance, not in the maximum disturbance like some are here, but in the intermediate level. So we have a peak of biodiversity there. And we have a peak of biodiversity, for instance, of lichens. Lichens grow on this substrates. They are not feeding on the tree at all. They are just feeding on the nutrients that came from the rain. And that includes both the water, the nutrients, and also anything they need to grow. They are photosynthetic organisms. Now you're seeing them dry and you're just seeing a few species. Later we'll see a place with more species because we have less cows. They will become much greener because they make photosynthesis when they are wet. And you can see a few other species that are more sensitive, that are not so well, and you can see them kind of dying. They grow and they die, they grow and they die as pollution comes by and comes out. So you have these species that tolerate, and you have other species that suffer a lot from it. We are not seeing any here, but you'll see later in another field. They are bigger, they are grey, they are green, and they are sometimes fluffy, three-dimensional, flowing out of the trunk. Those are the oligotrophic. They are the nitrogen sensitive. They are sensitive to this and they will disappear from here. And what we have done was use this shift of communities. As we increase the amount of ammonia, of nitrogen, communities will shift. The tolerant species will disappear, the sensitive ones, the tolerant ones will increase, the sensitive ones will decrease. So this shift in communities from the tolerance from the sensitive to the tolerance, as we increase the amount of ammonia, gave us what people call the critical level, or critical. And the critical level is the amount of nitrogen, amount of ammonia in the air, which makes species disappear, which makes the ecosystem start to feel, okay, I have a signal that something is changing. From background level, we have no disturbance, to this disturbed site that we are seeing here.
So it's a symbiosis between an algae, a photobiont, which could be an algae or a cyanobacteria, or both together, and a fungi. And they are very sensitive, so they are used for a lot of things. Air pollution, climate, forest structure, so you can use them as indicators of a lot of things. The way we measure, what Pedro told you about, is using here in Europe, we use the European standard method, which is now the European norm. If you have to do a biomonitoring study using lichens. And basically we use this grid, which is which has 50 centimeters with 5 quadrats of 10 per 10. And you place it, this is not, if I was doing this place for real, this tree would not be suitable because you need it to be as straight as possible, because if it's laying like this, you will get a lot of influence from the runover from the canopy. But well, this is a nice one to show you the difference between lichens. So basically we put it like this, and it should be lower because otherwise I won't get to the top to see it. But well, you just hang it on the tree and you register all the species that are inside the quadrats. So you have a field, I didn't bring one, but you need a field sheet, and you put, basically you register all the species. And if you saw the species back there, they were looking kind of sick. So this same species, the green, big green one, Flavopermelia, it was there as well, but it was kind of pinkish because the ammonia, it's like burning the lichen. And also in composition we have different things. So the species here are what Pedro called oligotrophic, so they are they don't tolerate high amounts of ammonia. And an easy difference that you could see here is that basically you have 3 main growth forms that lichen can grow. So you have the crustose ones, which are those spots, they are completely attached to the substrate. You have the foliose ones, like the big green that probably all of you see. It seems like a leaf.
Like a liver moss almost.
Yeah. And then you have these 3-dimensional ones, which are fruticose. And these are the most sensitive ones because they have a 3-dimensional growth form, which enables them to capture all of the particles and water from the atmosphere, because lichens take everything. They are more or less like a sponge. So if they are dry, they take nothing. Everything is deposited on the top. But as soon as they get a little bit of moisture from the atmosphere, they activate and they take inside everything what's on the surface of their thallus. So the way to do how we use it, you can see if this is quite more the fruticose ones, which are the ones resembling a small shrub. They are very sensitive. So if you look to a place and you see one, so their qualities should not be so bad. They tolerate, there are species that are more tolerant than others, of course, but usually it's a kind of a good place to be. So the way we use this to calculate and to do the work that Pedro was saying, so you register all the species that you get inside the 5 quadrants, and then you do the same for north, south, east and west on the tree. And you do some trees in a place, because usually the method says you should do at least 10. Sometimes it's not possible. If you went to the south of Portugal, for instance, that it's more dry, so the trees are quite sparse, and usually it's hard to get 10 suitable trees on the same place, but I would say at least 5 on a place, so you have an average of the place. And then you sum up all the frequencies. So imagine we have this one, and the frequency, you would sum the times it appears on the trunk.
Of the 5, you mean? Of the 5?
These 5 plus the other 3 5 quadrats that you would get. So, and we call it, the index that you take from this is the lichen diversity value, LDV. So you would get an LDV for each species, and then you can use it, you can do the same, so you can classify species, for instance, in nitrophytic species and oligotrophic species. So you will have an LDV for nitrophytic species and an LDV for oligotrophic, and then in the end you can have, that are the shifts that Pedro was talking. So if we did it here and there in a lot of other places on an intermediate, on a gradient of nitrogen deposition, you could see the shifts in the communities from the nitrophytic species. So for instance, you would see that in that place, no fruticose species, for instance, to when you go to better places with a lower amount of ammonia deposition, you would see that their frequency is much higher. The same applies to other factors. So for instance, we are using it also as climate change indicators. And growth form is a nice way of looking at it, because the growth form also has to do, as I told you, with the way they capture water from the atmosphere. So if you go to a dry place, you won't see these ones, because they are designed for a lot of water vapor and water particles in the atmosphere. And if you go to drier places, you would see probably more crustose or foliose species, more adapted to dry places. So you can use them as they are really a nice tool for monitoring a lot of different environmental conditions and stresses. If you use the same model for similar regions, you can have an idea of what will happen in the future if you are ready, because you cannot see maybe the vegetation. Lichens are quite sensitive, so they are usually one of the first components of the ecosystem to react. So even here we could be changing already climate, but you can see it from the climate data, because they usually, they use like those 30 years averages or the plants, but lichens for sure will have already a difference. And this was done, for instance, in the Netherlands. They did a work. They were using lichens for long years, and they did a work in 2002, if I'm not mistaken, to see the effects of when the SO2 diminished in Europe. The Industrial Revolution brought a lot of SO2 to the atmosphere, so all lichens, or a big part of lichens, died. We had a lot of what we called lichen deserts. When the SO2 measures, for air pollution measures, had to diminish, lichens came back again. So they did a field work to see what lichens were growing now, if they were coming back. And what they saw is that lichens were coming back, but a different kind of lichens than what they have. So an algae, which is Trentpolia. I was trying to see if I had some here, but I'm not seeing any. Trentpolia is a green algae, but it's usually classified as a different one, because it's really common in the tropics, because it likes really warm temperatures and a lot of humid air. And what they saw is that they had a lot of lichens with Trentpolia. So meaning that the temperature was already warming up, and lichens were giving the signal. And they did it again 5 years later, and they saw a huge difference. So you can see in what short time they can react and can give you an answer that something is happening. And that was something that you would not see if you look only, for instance, for climate data, for precipitation or temperature or whatever. So that's why we use them. They're really a nice tool.
So all our vineyards are behind the cellar, and recently we planted these two plots here. This is from 2012, this is from 2013, and the idea is to have some grapes close to our visitors, and from time to time we can invite them and do some, or picking the grapes or doing some work on the vineyard, because we have open days here. And we have one of the most important ID projects we have since many years is called Tyto Tagus, because we are in an area of the dispersion of the, I think the biggest, one of the biggest on the world of juveniles of Tyto alba, not in Charneca but in Lezíria, in the other flatlands. So it seems that they use it as kindergarten to teach their babies how to hunt those small mammals and mice and so on. So we use the Tyto alba as the symbol of preservation of biodiversity, and as the species that is protecting our vineyards, helping our winemaker to produce their wine. So it's a symbol of our vineyards. And we launched last year the Tyto alba brand. Tyto alba is the Latin name for barn owl. And it's a fantastic top seller at the moment, yeah, with very important sales not only for Portugal but for Finland, for Germany, Heidelberg, we have an importer there, for United States, Costco, and Switzerland as well.